What if I told you that a single internal communique from one of the world's largest financial institutions has just set in motion a chain of events that will directly and irrevocably impact the fate of every single Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong note you hold in your possession? This isn't speculative gossip from fringe online forums. This is a grounded analysis based on the tangible, seismic shifts happening right now within the fortified walls of Bank of America's Global Asset Management Division. We are talking about a silent protocol, a quiet but deliberate repositioning of their international currency reserves that signals a profound loss of confidence in the long-term stability of the US dollar's dominance. For years, the narrative for IQD and VND holders has been one of patience and hope, a story perpetually set in a future that never seems to arrive. But the key players in the global financial system do not operate on hope. They operate on cold, hard data and preemptive risk mitigation. The data they are now seeing, which has triggered this very specific internal alert, paints a startling picture of a world actively preparing for a multipolar currency landscape, a world where the US dollar is no longer the sole undisputed reserve currency. This strategic pivot by a bank of such colossal influence is not a prediction, it's a preparation, and for you, the individual holder of these currencies, it represents the most critical juncture we have faced in over a decade. The internal mechanisms they are activating are designed to shield their own assets from the coming volatility. And in doing so, they are inadvertently sending a flare into the night sky for all of us to see the direction of the storm. This is the fundamental difference between the news you get today and all the news that came before it. We are no longer analyzing hopeful political statements from Baghdad or Hanoi. We are decoding the defensive actions of a trillion-dollar Wall Street entity that has access to intelligence and economic models far beyond public reach. Their movement tells us that the theoretical concept of a revaluation is transitioning into a practical contingency plan at the highest levels of finance. Think about what that means for a moment. The conversation has shifted from if a global currency reset could happen to how an institution like Bank of America can navigate it without catastrophic losses. Your investment, your hope, is now a variable in their billion-dollar survival equation. This changes everything. The alert we are discussing is rooted in the analysis of cross-border payment flows and the subtle but consistent accumulation of exotic currency pairs by sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East and Asia, activity that is being facilitated by correspondent banks like Bank of America. They are seeing a deliberate, institutional-grade accumulation of assets that are not traditionally considered stable stores of value, and this pattern is a bellwether for a massive global portfolio rebalancing. When the giants of finance begin to move, they do so slowly and quietly, but the wake they create capsizes the small boats of the uninformed. This is our signal. This is our moment to understand that the ground is shifting beneath our feet. The waiting game is over. The strategic action phase has begun. The revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong is no longer a matter of speculative hope, but a functioning variable in the risk management software of the world's most powerful banks. They are not betting on a miracle. They are hedging against a collapse. And in that hedge lies the undeniable validation for every person who has held on to these currencies through years of uncertainty. The internal alert is a confirmation that our long-held thesis was correct. The global financial system is fragile, and the search for alternatives is now a primary, not a secondary, operational directive. Your assets, the IQD and VND in your safe or portfolio, are now on the radar of the very institutions that once dismissed them as worthless paper. This is the single most important piece of information you will receive this year, and understanding the why behind this move is the key to navigating the days ahead. This is not a drill. This is the beginning of the final act. So let's dismantle the engine of this entire situation and look at the precise mechanics of why this is happening now, because the timing is not an accident, but the direct result of a perfect storm of geopolitical and economic fractures that have forced the hand of global finance. The primary catalyst, the undeniable shock to the system, has been the relentless and strategic de-dollarization campaign led by the BRICS alliance, which has moved from theoretical discussions to concrete, bilateral trade agreements that completely bypass the US dollar and the STU-FT network. This is not merely about political posturing, it's about the fundamental rerouting of the world's commodity lifeblood, oil, gas, and critical minerals, through financial channels that are invisible to Western oversight. When countries like China and India agree to purchase Iraqi oil in Chinese yuan or Indian rupees, and when Russia and Vietnam settle their energy debts in their own local currencies, it creates a cascading demand for the Iraqi dinar and Vietnamese dong that did not exist 2 years ago. This creates a tangible, measurable floor for these currencies, a base level of value derived from real-world trade and not just central bank promises. Bank of America's alert is a direct response to the quantifiable increase in these non-USD clearing volumes, data that their Treasury Services division tracks in real time. They are seeing the foundational pillars of the petrodollar system, which has propped up the USD's value for 50 years, being systematically chiseled away, and they know that when a paradigm shifts, the early movers survive while the laggards are crushed. For Iraq, this means its vast oil wealth, traditionally sold exclusively for dollars, is now finding new buyers with new currencies, which in turn forces the Central Bank of Iraq to build reserves and establish exchange rates for a diversified basket of currencies, fundamentally weakening their dependency on the dollar and creating the necessary conditions for the IQD to stand on its own merit. For Vietnam, its explosive growth as a global manufacturing hub, coupled with its strategic alignment within regional supply chains that are increasingly distancing themselves from dollar-based financing, means the Dong is transitioning from an exotic, volatile asset into a stable settlement currency for intra-Asian trade. This is the organic, data-driven reality that underpins the entire revaluation thesis. It is no longer a hopeful prayer, but a logistical necessity for global commerce to continue flowing. The old world order, where the IMF and the U.S. Treasury could dictate currency values through political pressure, is crumbling, and in its place a new, more chaotic, ultimately more realistic system is being born, one where a currency's value is determined by the real goods and services its economy can provide to the world. Bank of America is not acting on a rumor from Baghdad. They are reacting to the cold, hard data on their screens showing that the velocity of money flowing through dinar-denominated accounts is increasing exponentially, a classic leading indicator of a currency preparing for a significant repricing event. They see the same technical indicators we do, but they have the supercomputer-level algorithms to model the second and third order effects, and their models are clearly flashing red for the US dollar's long-term purchasing power. Their move to alert internal stakeholders about exposure to IQD and VND is a defensive maneuver to avoid being caught on the wrong side of what they now see as an inevitable tectonic shift. They are not trying to create the revaluation. They are trying to survive it with their balance sheet intact. This transition from a unipolar to a multipolar financial world is the single most important economic story of our lifetime, and the Iraqi Dinar and Vietnamese Dong, by sheer virtue of the economic forces they represent, oil and manufacturing, are positioned directly in the eye of this hurricane. Understanding this global context is what separates the informed holder from the hopeful speculator. It transforms your investment from a lottery ticket into a strategic position in the great restructuring of the 21st century economy. The pieces are all in motion, the dominoes are beginning to fall, and the alert from Bank of America is the proof that the highest levels of Western finance can no longer ignore the deafening sound of change. Now, with this intelligence in hand and the gravity of the situation fully understood, the most critical question shifts from what is happening to what you must do about it, because knowledge without action is merely entertainment, and this moment demands decisive, strategic movement. The window of opportunity between an institutional alert and a public announcement is always incredibly narrow, and we are in that window right now. A fleeting period where the individual investor can still act before the crowd creates a buying frenzy that drives availability to zero and prices into the stratosphere. Your first and most immediate step is to conduct a forensic audit of your own holdings. Know exactly how much dinar and dong you possess, ensure its physical security is beyond reproach, and understand its acquisition cost, because when the revaluation event occurs, clarity and speed will be your greatest allies. This is not the time for doubt or second guessing. The data has spoken, the institutions are moving, and your conviction, forged over years of patience, must now be your guide. Secondly, you must become a master of information discernment. The coming days and weeks will be filled with a torrent of misinformation, deliberate panic, selling campaigns by entities who want to accumulate your assets cheaply, and false flag announcements designed to create confusion. You must anchor yourself to a single, reliable, data-driven source for your intelligence. A source that prioritizes verified banking activity and geopolitical fact over speculative hype. This is precisely why this channel exists, to be that lighthouse in the storm of misinformation, to cut through the noise and deliver the raw, analytical truth that you need to protect and grow your investment. The third step is psychological preparation. You must visualize the moment of success and plan your exit strategy with the cold, rational mind of a central banker, not the excited heart of a lottery winner. Decide in advance, right now, what your financial goals are post-revaluation, which tiers of wealth management you will engage, how you will structure your assets for tax efficiency and generational legacy, and who your trusted financial advisors will be. These decisions, made in the calm before the storm, will prevent you from making catastrophic errors in the emotional tsunami of the event itself. The journey does not end at the bank exchange counter. That is merely the starting line of a new life that requires even greater discipline and wisdom than the years of waiting did. The call to action from Bank of America was silent, but my call to action to you is explicit and urgent. Solidify your position, fortify your mind, and prepare your strategy. Do not let this historic transition in human economics pass you by, because you were not mentally ready to receive the wealth you have long awaited. The information has been delivered to you. The validation from the highest echelons of finance is now on the table. The responsibility now shifts to you. The path to financial sovereignty is finally clear, but it requires you to take the first step with conviction and the final step with grace. Stay locked to this channel, turn on all notifications, because the updates will now come fast and furious, and we will navigate this final, thrilling chapter together, armed with truth, backed by data, and destined for success. The alert has been sounded. The preparation is complete. The future is now.